I've done a couple of videos in the last couple of weeks about investment risk, and today is going to be another one of those. When it comes to investment risk, there's kind of three ways to think about it, or at least three ways I think about it. You have risk of capital loss, which is losing money when your investment values go down. Then you have risk to your time, which is losing time because you need time to recover portfolio value when losses occur. And then there's risk to your emotional or psychological state. Now, I'm not going to address the psychological component in this video, but in today's video, I'm going to show you a mathematical model, very short, very simple, that shows how you can quantify risk of loss and how much time it actually takes to recover value that is lost in a portfolio. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Amzalag. I'm the head financial planner and owner of Peak Financial Planning. We are fee-only fiduciary financial planners and wealth managers in Southern California. Work with clients all over the country. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about how to quantify investment risk so that you can make better financial decisions and ultimately live at peace with your wealth. So just a brief introduction to the math model that I'm going to show on the screen. It's a very simple one, and I will provide a link to a template in the description to this video. Impetus for this video came from this concept that I hear a lot, which is markets just go up and to the right over time. And so we should just allow losses to happen in our portfolio, because if we just have a long enough investment time horizon, the losses will smooth out. Now, I think of this and I tried to think, what other areas of our lives would we ever accept that as a possibility? We would never accept that as an explanation for our businesses. I'm just going to lose money in my business for a period of time because over time, everything goes up and to the right. And so eventually it will just correct itself. No, you'd go out of business. I'm not going to accept that when it comes to sports. I'm only going to play offense and never play defense because offense always wins games. No, you're going to attend to your defense and plug holes in the sport. And I could go on and on with different analogies like that. And as I thought about different comparable areas of life, I thought to myself, let's look at the actual numbers and see, what do the numbers tell us? How impactful are declines to our investment portfolio or losses in our investment portfolio? And how do we really quantify and understand what the impact is? It's hard to understand the impact of an unrealized loss in an investment portfolio. And I believe that the best way to understand that is by giving it a reference to time. How long does it take to recover a loss? If you have a bigger loss, is it linear? Does it take the same amount of time to recover that bigger loss, or does it take longer? What happens as losses grow? So I'm going to show that on the screen here right now, so stay tuned. I'm actually just going to pop that up. Okay, so this is a simple model that has some formulas in here, and I'm just going to explain how this works. Again, I'll put this in the description, so anybody who wants to can come in here and change the starting portfolio value or change the percent decline so you can start to understand and maybe put your own portfolio amounts in here and forecast how much a loss is going to affect your portfolio. So here's what I'm going to show in this model. We're going to take an example portfolio dollar amount. We're going to put in an example percent decline based on market performance. We're going to show the ending portfolio value, the actual gross amount of the loss, and then the amount of gain that is required to recover. And then based on the average return of the S&P, how long it takes to recover. All of this is a formula, so we can change any variable in here from the starting portfolio value or the decline amount, and it will automatically change the rest of it. So let's look at this really quickly. If you have $1 million portfolio and you have a 10% market decline, which is pretty standard in any given year, the ending portfolio value at the end of that 10% decline is $900,000. That's an $100,000 loss. Now, this is one of the breakdowns I see when I speak to prospects or anybody in general, is that we tend to think that if we lose $100,000, all we need to do is gain that $100,000 back. And while that is true, as a percent, you need to gain a larger percent back because now you're starting with a smaller dollar amount. So proportionally, $100,000 of loss out of $1 million portfolio is a 10% decline. But in order to gain $100,000 from that new starting portfolio value, which is $900,000, you need an 11.1% gain. All right. Now, this doesn't look like that big a difference when the losses are small, but let me tell you that the way this works is that losses are linear and the required gain that you need in order to recover is exponential. You need larger and larger gains proportionally as your losses accrue or increase in size. I'm going to show you in here because we're going to change the numbers. But what I want to also say, the final takeaway of this simple model at 10% here is that if you need 11.1% to regain back from $900,000 after that 10% decline, the question is, how long does that take? And the answer is that takes the average return of the S&P is roughly 8.2%. The number of years to recover is 1.36. So you need 1.25 years roughly to recover that 10% loss. What happens? Now, 10% happens in any given year, and a lot of times that just smooths out. 20% losses, a typical bear market is in excess of 25 or 30% in decline. They don't happen that often, but a 10% decline happens almost annually. Between 10 and 30%, now they happen with less and less frequency. But let's just show the illustration, because when you're retiring or close to retiring, the biggest risk to you is time. If you're 63 and you plan to retire at 67, or if you're 55 and you plan to retire at 60, you just don't have a lot of time for your portfolio to smooth out losses. Now that's simply a fact. Listen to the media and pretend to believe that we are just going to smooth out losses over time. It's okay. You have to really ask yourself, who does it benefit if I'm being told to just take losses on the chin, like it should just be okay, when that would be unacceptable in any other area of my life? But let's look at the math. Let's say that you have a 20% loss instead of a 10% loss. So starting with that same portfolio value, now you have an ending portfolio value of 800K, your loss is 200. Instead, you have a 20% decline, and now you need a 25% gain in order to recover that. A 20% decline might happen over a 1-year period. You now need 25% to recover that. And then again, the question arises, how much time? This tells us we need 3 years roughly to recover that using the average S&P historic rate of return. That means that you will have taken 1 year for the loss and now 3 years for the recovery, and now you're set up for 4 years to go from where you were to back to where you were. That's a 4-year journey to nowhere. Let's look at some more extreme real quickly, and then you can come in here if you want to and use, like I said, the link in the description and play with this. But let's look at what happens if you have a 35% or a 30% loss. The reason I'll use this number is because in 2022, the average retail investor lost 30% in portfolio value. And while the market has performed well now in 2023, the question is, have retail investors recovered? And the answer is absolutely not in most cases. And you can see why here, because if you look at a 30% decline resulting in a $300,000 loss, now you don't need a 30% recovery, you need a 42.8% recovery. That's almost 43%. And then again, the question is, how long does that take? So you've had 1 year for the decline in 2022, and now you need roughly 5 years. 5 years to get back to where you were. So if you're 55 and you're retiring at 60, that means 55, you're going to be back where you were at 55 when you're at 60, and you've had inflation that whole time, you've had cost of living increases, and you haven't had any actual increase in portfolio value. Your retirement plan, if you had one, is all wrong, because plans are built off of straight line annualized projections, and you can watch another video I have about the problem with straight line annualized projections. What I'm trying to get across here is just like, we spend way too much time being brainwashed and propagandized to think about rate of return and growth as the only metric without any education. It's not our fault as consumers or your fault as consumers. We're being brainwashed to believe that there's no risk involved in this, or we should just accept the risk because it's small risk. And this is not small risk. 5 years to get your portfolio from where it was to where it will be, or to where it was again, break even, is a colossal waste of time. It's hard to really explain the mathematical impact or loss that happens there in order to get that recovery. Now let's add one more element to this. So you can come in here at the top here and play with these numbers and change portfolio values and declines and all that stuff. I have another model down here. This is what's called a sequence of return model. So sequence of return is when you have negative portfolio returns, but then you also take income or distributions from the portfolio. Effectively, what you're doing when you take income from the portfolio is you're taking a pie and trimming the pie down to a slightly smaller size, and you're eating or taking income from that delta, the amount of the pie that you trimmed. And I want to just show what happens if you do take a 4%, you just use the standard 4% rule. You take your distribution as normal. You don't make any portfolio changes to play defense for losses. What happens? So in this model here, you have the same $1 million starting portfolio. You have your 30% market decline, let's say. You have a loss of 300K. Now you still take your distribution of 40,000 because you're doing it based on your starting portfolio value at the beginning of the year, which is what most ill-equipped financial advisors or online articles will tell you to do. Now your ending portfolio value at the end of 2022 in this hypothetical situation is $660,000. Now you need a 51.5% gain to get back to where you started at the beginning of that year, and using the average rate of return, that's 6.28 years to get back. So you're taking the distribution and you're actually increasing the amount of gain, the required gain, to recover from 42.86 to 51.52. Your 4% distribution doesn't require 4% just to get back. It requires 9%. And this is to show that losses and distributions are linear. The required recovery or the required growth is exponential. You need way more growth to recover for distributions or losses from the portfolio value. So if seeing this on the screen gets your blood boiling, as it does mine, I literally needed a minute or two to calm down between doing the screen share and doing this. I cannot explain the depths which it bothers me that the level of propaganda and brainwashing that's going on about the lack of education and the lack of respect for investment risk. But if this bothers you the way it does me, then the question always becomes, what do I do about this? How do I protect against this? And the answer is, it requires prudent, calculated, thoughtful investment changes. And if you've watched a couple other videos I've done recently, I've talked about the faultiness that I believe is apparent in the 3-fund portfolio, this idea of just investing in 3 simple mutual funds because they match markets or they match indexes. And if you just leave them over time, it'll work out. I don't believe in that, but you can see the numbers here also demonstrate that if you just set it and forget it, what you're doing is you could be giving yourself long journeys to nowhere. You could also be giving yourself really risky seasons of life, maybe when especially if you're watching these videos and you're close to retirement, as you likely are if you're on my channel, then this is an extremely risky stance to take. So the question is, what do you do about it? I plan to make videos in the future explaining what I usually present to prospects and clients and what I suggest doing about it. So I will give that information on my YouTube channel, but for the sake of this video, so it's not a 20-minute video, we're going to end here. I challenge you to think to yourself, what am I hearing and repeating and just believing without looking at the underlying numbers and what the actual damage to my life would be if I just repeat propaganda and things I read on articles or hear on videos, right? Including mine, like challenge everything that I say, as well as challenge everything you see other people say. Anyhow, this is clearly a passionate subject for me. So with my normal outro here, thank you for your time and attention watching. I hope you found this video valuable. Again, Excel calculator that will show portfolio declines and the required gain, and then sequence of returns added to that where you take distributions will be below. So you can download that as an Excel and play with it with your own numbers. If you want to see what to do about it, stay tuned for the next video. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel. You'll get served more videos like this. I hope you appreciated this topic, and if you'd like to see other topics like this, please send me a note in the comments below. And last but not least, if you would like to have us do a consultation, my business, my fee-only certified financial planning practice, you can reach out to us at any time on our website at www.thepeakfp.com, or you can find some helpful resources in the description to this video below. As always, thank you for your time and attention, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.